Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Instacarhk. Today we're reviewing this 1994 Ferrari 348 GTB. Now, let's address the elephant in the room first. The 348 undeniably has the most subpar reputation out of the whole V8 lineup, and there are a number of reasons for this. First of all, I think it's timing. It released right after the hugely successful 308 and 328 lineup, which was the most successful model line out of Ferrari history. So right off the bat, the 348 has huge shoes to fill. Afterwards came the 355, which was an instant success, one of the most beloved V8 models in Ferrari history, instant classic. So right at the beginning, the 348 is placed between a rock and a very hard place. Not to mention, its release coincided with the mighty NSX from Honda. So all these aspects, all these things surrounding the 348's release naturally made it very challenging and clouded its reputation. But actually, the car has quite a number of significant development which are historically significant in Ferrari's V8 lineup history, including the engine layout. The 348 is the first engine layout in the two-seater V8 lineup to have the T engine layout. What it means is the engine is placed in the longitudinal direction with the gearbox placed behind it in the transverse direction, creating a T sign, which was derived directly from the hugely successful 1970s Ferrari Formula One car, the 312T, a championship winner driven by none other than Niki Lauda. This engine layout allows the car to sit in a lower and have a lower center of gravity, because for the older models like the 308 and 328, the gearbox was directly under the engine, therefore causing a very high center of gravity. Looks-wise, the 348 mimics one of Ferrari's most iconic models, the Ferrari Testarossa. As you can see with the side air strakes and the rear light grille, these were all derived from the mighty Testarossa. The 348 was also the first two-seater V8 Ferrari lineup to release the Spider model, and most importantly, the lightweight road-going model, the 348 GT Competizione. Now, Ferrari released the 348 in 1989, and production went all the way to 1995. Admittedly, the earlier cars, the TS and TB, they didn't handle that good. Apparently, according to car magazines in period back then, it was very unpredictable and edgy at speed. A number of magazines said, they lost control of the car in the test track unexpectedly. So the handling was indeed a problem, which did contribute to the reputation of the car. And to address that, in 1993, Ferrari came out with the facelift version addressing all these problems, being the 348 GTB and GTS, which is what we have here today, the GTB. Exterior-wise, the facelifted GTB version had some minor revisions to the front end, and most obviously, the underskirts are now in the same color as the body. The older models used to have a black underbody, and contrasting the body color, but now it's color-coded. Engine-wise, power has been increased from the earlier models 300 horsepower to now 320 horsepower. This was achieved by upgrading and enhancing the Bosch engine management system and a new exhaust system. Most importantly, the handling. Ferrari had widened the rear track of the 348 GTB by 1 inch and also tweaked the suspension system. And apparently, the handling has been improved a lot more in this updated facelift GTB version. Finally, Ferrari made a total of 8,844 348s in the 6-year production. But what's interesting is the facelift models, the GTB and the GTS, accounts for very, very little of that 8,000 odd production. The GTS model, the open-top model, had about 137 only. And this GTB model, there are only 252 of them worldwide. And this being a right-hand drive means that it will be even more rare. Right, so now it's time to go for a drive, and this is the first time I'm driving a Ferrari 348. And immediately when you sit down, including closing the doors, the whole car feels a lot more refined than the 328, and that was outside of my expectation. I expected them to be reasonably similar, but the door, the closing of the door is a lot more solid. The car is a lot more roomy, and the materials are nicer. Leather all around, and these nice looking plastic. It feels different immediately, and that is an immediate surprise, because I honestly did expect it to be closer to the 328. So yeah, let's start. Is a fuel injected dog leg first gear, so there should be nothing I'm not familiar with. The car fires up right away. A lot more solid noise, engine note compared to a 328, immediately noticeable. This car is largely original, but except for a Capristo exhaust and this Momo steering wheel that the owner changed. Otherwise, it's pretty much stock. So let's go. First gear, dog leg. The clutch is fine, normal. It's not light, but it's not heavy. Not too different from the other V8s I've driven before. But there's also a fly-off handbrake. Okay, let's go. The gear shifter, there's a bit of a spring to it, that it kind of springs into the second and third gear. It helps you, unlike the older 308 and 328s, which really is all you pushing to second gear, third gear, whatnot. Now, so let's give it a go. All right, that was different. Now, by now I've driven the 308, 328, 360 and this obviously is right in between the models I've tried, and certainly right in between the 328 and my 360. And this car is a lot closer than the 360 than it is close to the 328. The engine, the way it picks up, it's not a very fast car, to be honest. It's 320 horsepower. It's not the, it's heavier than the 328, as you do with newer models being heavier. But it goes up a lot more linear, the power, and less dramatic than the 328, for example. And I think part of this is because of the engine management has also been upgraded in the 348. So when you step on it, it goes up really linearly, not dramatic, but you're picking up speed. And these are all sort of the modernization that you start finding in this 348 compared to the 328. So, it's very smooth power uptake. It just goes very smoothly. But admittedly, it does feel heavier than the 328. The 328 picks up not as effortlessly, but at the same time the 328 picks up lighter, because you do feel the car being a lot lighter. To be honest, head to head, at least the feeling, I don't know about actual performance, but head to head, the speed between this and the 328 does not feel too different. So the owner bought this car from Blackbird, actually. You have all seen this car in our Blackbird 848 video when when they had the F8 Tributo in and put lined up all the V8 models in the Repulse Bay showroom, and we did a video. And in fact, it was when the owner saw our video and noticed there was a 348 that started inquiring about it and realized it was on consignment and for sale, and so he bought it. It's a cute story, how the owner bought this car, because many years ago, the owner, his boss, had a 355 and then lent him the 355 for a week to enjoy. And during that week, he took a lot of pictures of the 355 with his two young daughters at the time. And then he said last year, before he bought this car, he was looking at old photo albums and came across those photos of his baby daughters with the 355. And that immediately stirred his emotions of wanting to get back into a Ferrari. So in fact, in the beginning, he was actually looking for a 355, but nice ones are hard to come by in Hong Kong. So instead, he saw our episode at Blackburn and found out the 348 was for sale, and he bought it. And it has been a very good choice since, because this car is in a very, very good nick. The last owner owned it for a number of years, kept all the maintenance up to date. So needless to say, the owner is very happy. And speaking of maintenance, the 348 can be expensive to maintain, definitely more expensive than my 328 because of the engine being placed in the longitudinal direction. As you will recall in my 512TR episode, when the engine is placed in the longitudinal direction, if you want to change the cam belts, which in these cars you have to change every 3 to 5 years, you have to take the whole engine out. So the labor cost is very high. But I understand from the owner of this car that the ex-owner just changed the cam belt a year before he sold it. So this car is in rude health, it's very good. Very smooth and easy. It's less classic than the 328. You hear less of the metal noise and whatnot because it feels a bit assisted. But you know, it's still an open-gated Ferrari manual. It's nothing to complain about. Now the owner changed the exhaust to a Capristo, but frankly, it's not too intrusively loud. In fact, I think this sounds just right, because according to the owner, the original exhaust is really tame, you know, not loud at all. So I think it's actually a very good change. And this Capristo exhaust actually has a valve, but it's not so loud that you hear a switch. I can't really hear a switch. The car just sounds, you know, the sound level just sounds very progressive, you know, relevant to how much gas I'm putting in. Brakes are okay, you know, typical 90s brakes. The steering feel is still very good because still from an era of non-power steering. Anyway, all in all, it has been a very good drive. I think you can see how much I was enjoying it just now. And I am very glad that after driving it, I am quite confident that the so-called bad reputation that the 348 has, at least in the GTB, at least the facelift version, is mostly false, really. I mean, the car can be quicker, it does feel heavy and it's not that fast on the straight, but it's a great car. It's a great car. So I'm very glad to know that, you know, the 348 gave me a very good experience instead of the so-called bad reputation that it has in the media. So if you like this video, please give us a like and subscribe. Please remember to click the bell button next to the subscribe button so you know when our next video is coming, which will be soon. Thank you.